Hello, Free from an Allergy community, and welcome back to day one of our Christmas virtual show. So, in our last session today, I'm so excited to introduce Jackie. Jackie is the author of children's allergy book series featuring Ty and Ravi. Her son Ty has multiple food allergies, and after realizing the need for allergy education when her son was diagnosed with 7 food allergies, Jackie launched, My Food Allergy Friends. She has produced 6 books in her educational allergy series, a string of educational resources for parents, schools, and childcare centres, and runs the Food Allergy Smart program in childcare centres and schools, as well as her popular allergy awareness sessions in Australia. Jackie also co-founded Allergy Masterclass with Simone Albert, providing allergy education for families, focusing on practical tips for home life, kindy, and school, and addressing the mental health aspect of allergies that is often overlooked. Allergy Masterclass is passionate about educating everyone so families can work together in providing safe and a fun-filled life for their children, bringing grandparents, mums, dads, aunts, uncles, and children together to empower them to live an amazing life with allergies. So today's session it's going to be called How to Handle Celebrations When Your Child Has Allergies. And Jackie Nevard has an interesting session for us today with lived experience and another story she'll be sharing with us. So I would love to introduce Jackie.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to today's allergy show about how to handle celebrations when your child has allergies. So, as Lauren was saying, it's my absolute passion to educate people about allergies, and namely children, their families, and the wider community. So this time of year can be very challenging and quite stressful for families when they have a child with allergies. There are endless, it seems, events happening, celebrations at childcare or school, or at Christmas we have lots of family get-togethers. So how do we handle all these celebrations without becoming completely overwhelmed? So today in this session, I hope to share lots of tips and tricks that I've learned over the last 12 years. So I'm starting off with this one, exclusion. This is something that I personally find the hardest thing to deal with when dealing with allergies. Anaphylaxis may happen a handful of times over the years, but exclusion can happen daily, weekly, or many times throughout the year. And it's something that your child might struggle with as well. So to them, it might not be such a big deal that they can't eat certain foods, but when they start getting excluded from things, this is something that they're going to struggle with, basically, as we do as a family. So how can we manage all this? So first of all, we might have high expectations of what's going to happen at an event. These expectations might not be met, and then that's going to form disappointment. Now, at this time of year, when you've got, it seems like, events happening one after the other, you don't want to be living in this permanent state of disappointment, because it's not a fun place to be. So how can we change that to make this time of year manageable? So instead, when you're planning celebrations, you can focus on 3 goals. So first of all, you want your child to be able to attend. You want them to do that safely, and you want them to be included. So an example of this might be that you will take your child's own safe food. That way they will be able to attend safely and be included. So let's have a look at what this might look like. So first of all, let's have a look at Christmas parties. So this might have already taken place in your childcare centre at school. I'm in Queensland, so the last day of school for children is next Wednesday. So I think a lot of classes will have their end of year party on Tuesday or Wednesday at school next week. Now there's often 2 options with the Christmas party. One, your child may be catered for. This is more likely to happen in a childcare setting where they might already be providing food for them every day. And the other option is to bring a plate in, so that's shared food. And that's, of course, something that children with allergies won't be able to do. So they're the 2 options that you have. And it's really important that we manage Christmas parties so way ahead of time. So hopefully anybody listening that's at this point will already have spoken to their educator at childcare or their classroom teacher and already had the discussion about how they're going to manage the classroom party. So, and if you're actually starting school next year, this is really important to do. So you will actually start talking about the Christmas party right at the start of school. So you'll have a class meeting with the class teacher, and you can actually discuss how you want the Christmas celebration to happen. So here's a couple of examples of what a Christmas safe party box might look like. So these are some examples of boxes that Ty has taken into school over the years. Now, both these boxes actually have lids. So the one on the left there, the large square box, it's just a Tupperware container and it has a lid, which is important because it's important that other children don't start taking and helping themselves to that food. Because of course, if they do that, that food's going to have be contaminated and will be unsafe for your child. The Christmas tree box on the right, which I absolutely love, I picked this up at an op shop for about $4, but I think you can actually find these at, I think it's Big W that sell them for about $12. And it's awesome. It comes with a lid, so it's really easy to transport to school, or if you're going to a family for Christmas celebrations, this is really easy to fill it with your child's favourite treats. It's got a lid, so there's no chance of cross-contamination. You can safely put it in a fridge. And you can see it's full of all like what I like to call naughty foods that Ty's not allowed to normally eat. Interestingly, I had this conversation the other day with a parent because I shared his recent party box, which was pretty unhealthy. Now, in the early days when we used to take these boxes in, Ty absolutely used to love fruits. So most of his party box was just different fruits because he just thought that these were like lollies. This was just brilliant. But as your child gets older, they start to be very aware of what their friends are eating, and they'll start asking for all the unhealthy snacks and the lollies. And unfortunately, when he can read, I couldn't say that it was unsafe for him. So now we have what I call naughty foods. So this is normally, oops, pressing the wrong thing here. This is normally the boxes and the option we choose when we're managing Christmas parties at school. Now, my number one tip would be to involve your child. So I'll share a little story with you. When Ty was in prep, I went to pick him up from school and I said, "Oh, did you have a good day?" And he was like, "No, it was really boring." And I said, "Why? What have you been doing?" So we've been arranging the Christmas party. And we spent the last 2 hours, I'm sure it wasn't 2 hours, arranging all the foods that people are going to bring in. So everyone was deciding who would bring the chocolate cake in, who would bring the chips in, who would bring the fruit in. And he said, and I wasn't involved because I was just told, well, you just bring your own food, Ty. So I said, oh, okay. So behind him, there was a whiteboard and it had all the different foods that people were going to bring in. So I said, I know, we'll just take a photo of it and then we'll go home and create your own party with all the foods that you want. So I took a photo of all the foods that people were bringing in and we literally created his, exactly the same foods all his friends were bringing in, and we just put it in one of those little boxes. And this way it meant he had some control back. He was involved, he had a choice of what he could have in his box, and most of all it was fun. So allergies aside, it was a really nice, fun thing to do with child. We sat there outside creating these little, I don't know if you can see very well there, but they're little gingerbread men and little reindeers. So that was a lot of fun doing that. And just move on to the next slide here. So with any activity, whether it be Christmas, sports day, or family celebration, it's all about planning. So plan, plan, plan. So some tips are to involve your child, as we've just spoken about. Number 2 is make it fun. It should be fun, whatever you're doing. Decide whether you're going to volunteer. So especially when your child's younger, it's very easy to go in and volunteer at Christmas parties. And that way you have a lot of control. You can make sure your child's not grabbing anything that they shouldn't be. As your child gets older, of course, this is not going to be cool having mum or dad come into school. Find out what's happening in the event. Are there going to be activities? Are they going to eat? Are these things separated, or are the kids literally going to be eating and walking around, touching everything? So find out what's happening first of all, and then you can plan how it can be done safely. Ask things like, are the tables going to be wiped and are hands washed? And this might be a really good slide to just take a photo of. So especially if you haven't started your child at childcare or school yet, these are really important questions that you want to be asking any educator or teacher when you are especially managing the class Christmas party. So first of all, are they going to be catering for your child? And if they're not, then are you going to be taking your safe party food in? Ask things like, will food be eaten in one area to avoid food in the classroom? So especially at school, they might have the class Christmas party in the morning. And if they're all eating at their desks, you want to make sure that the floor is wiped down in case they're sitting on the floor for mat time later, and any classroom desks are wiped down properly, because your child might spend the afternoon actually at their desk. So just make sure that you know exactly where the food's going to be and if it's going to be cleaned up. So making sure that any tables are wiped down properly with soap and hot water. And this is a really important question to ask. Will students be eating before the activities, or what way around is this going to happen? So a really good way around to do this is have the activity first. So that may be that you have, in childcare, for example, you might have Christmas carols, your children might be doing a performance for you, and then you will be doing the food. And that way, even if your child has a safe party box, they can sit with you, eat their safe food. And if you feel that the environment is not that safe for your child, you can see lots of kids are running around with food and touching everything, you can then decide that it might be time to leave, but your child's still been included in all the main activities for that event. Will hands be washed after eating? Now, all the really good childcare centres that I work with always have this as a routine. So kids are just used to it. They'll have their food, they clear their own plates, and then they wash their hands. So it's nothing out of the ordinary. But just make sure that these routines are carried through when they're having the Christmas party. At school, this is a tricky one. Kids aren't so used to washing their hands. Although, of course, this year the whole world has learned to wash their hands with COVID. So this is something that now is a really good time to talk to your teacher about, so we can continue this past 2020. Who will be supervising younger students? So in childcare centre, when they have a class party, I think I actually went into all his Christmas parties that he had. So it was quite easy. I could keep an eye on him. At school, in prep, often parents will go in and they might supervise. If you're already working full time, it might be that there's a teacher aide that might supervise your child. This is important because if you think about a party, most children will just, at most parties, you can just help yourself to anything that they see, any food. So they're not used to being told that food that looks really great in those boxes I shared earlier, they can't eat. So it's important that there is a teacher aide or someone supervising, that no students are going to be helping themselves to your child's safe food. So yeah, again, just deciding whether you're going to volunteer and attend the party or whether there will be a teacher helping out. Now, I'm going to share a couple of personal stories with you now. These aren't that positive stories, but I would like to share them with you because I think it just shows that some of the roadblocks that you can come up against and the ways that you can handle them or plan for the next year's party better. So the first story is when Ty graduated at kindy. And so the party, I spoke to the director and found out what was going on, and it was bring a plate. So all families were asked to bring a plate and a food. From memory, it was a long time ago now, but from memory, there was something in the newsletter, or we were emailed to not bring certain foods in. So that was fine. We took in his party lunchbox. When we arrived at the party, Ty was standing right next to me, and the director came up to me and said, "Oh, I'm really sorry, Jackie. I did say all these foods shouldn't be coming in, but parents haven't listened, and all these creams and ice creams and everything's coming in. But it doesn't matter because, milk won't kill Ty." So 2 issues with this. One, Ty was standing right there, and that is not the sort of language I like to use around young children. You know, it's much better to say, you know, certain foods will make you very sick. And the other thing is, everybody has a real understanding of how serious nut, peanut, or tree nut allergies are, but they don't have the same understanding about all the other top 9 allergens that children may be allergic to. And milk and egg are up there with the top 3 allergens that children have. So it's completely incorrect to say that milk won't kill him. If you're allergic to milk, you can have anaphylaxis to milk. So anyway, the party went on. They did their graduation ceremony. They all went up on stage and dressed up really cutely and got their certificates. And then it was time for the food. Now, at this point, Ty sat with us and ate his food, but all the other kids were eating their food, running around, playing on bikes, eating, chocolate cakes smeared all over their faces, all over their hands, playing all over the playground equipment. So a really unsafe environment. It didn't feel comfortable with Ty going down the slide when I can see all these children before going down with, you know, cream, chocolate cake, whatever, all over them. So that's an example of why it's really important to find out exactly what's going to be happening in the party, and making sure that, if you can, that the food happens at the end. Now, the second story actually happened last week. So Ty has now just finished primary school, and he had his graduation party. So my expectations weren't exceptionally high. You know, I just stuck to the 3 goals. You know, I want him to be able to attend, do it safely, and be included. So I found out about the party. So the first step is always to email whoever's in charge and find out what's actually happening at the event. So I did that, and somebody called me and they said, there's going to be a meal. It's going to be you know, chicken burgers and chips. So you need to contact this cafe, and they gave me the number for the cafe. Excellent. The second things that were going to happen was there was going to be cupcakes for everybody, and there was going to be a lolly bar. And in fact, this I have to say that this wasn't a school-run graduation party. This was parents that had volunteered. So first of all, I'm really grateful to the parents that put this party on, because, you know, the kids had a great time. But I didn't have much control because it wasn't something that was school-run. So the parent that I spoke to was very helpful. They wanted to provide the cupcakes, and they wanted to provide safe lollies. Now, for me personally, I don't know these parents. I just feel more comfortable. You know, I don't know what their allergy awareness is or their understanding of cross-contamination. So for me, I said, no, it's not a problem. I will make the cupcakes, and I will bring in some safe lollies for Ty. So to me, you know, it was all organized. I was talking to the cafe, and I was bringing in some safe food. Excellent. All my 3 goals had been met. Spoke to the cafe. They were also very, very helpful. The chips were safe. The chicken burger wasn't safe because the crumb had milk or egg in it, but they were happy to grill the chicken separately. And I would either bring in a safe bun, or they were going to look up the ingredients for me. So it was all sorted in my mind. It was happy days. A few days later, I got some texts come through to say that the cafe was no longer willing to cater for Ty. They didn't want to take the responsibility, and that he would either not have to come, or he would have to bring his own food in. As I got speaking, so I called the parent up, and as I got speaking to them, I then also discovered that suddenly there was going to be an ice cream stand, and that all the kids were going to have ice creams. So I was completely sort of shocked and overwhelmed by this, because why would you do that when I've already disclosed that there's a child with a milk allergy? So I said, hang on, I knew nothing about the ice cream stand. Why would you do that when you know someone has a serious allergy to milk? You wouldn't do that. You wouldn't bring in a bowl of peanuts if you know that you have a child there with peanuts. So again, it's that there's just that lack of understanding about other allergens. And basically that's when things started going wrong. They were like, well, you know, if you don't like it, if you feel it's unsafe, then he should stay at home. Now, any parent's going to know that their child's not going to want to miss out on their graduation. So these are the sorts of roadblocks that you can come up against. And there's not a great deal you can do about it. You know, this was their party, they were organising it, and these were their rules. So all I could say is my piece and let them know that I wasn't happy, and that Ty was going to be coming. The other thing is that even though one of the parents there was trained in using an EpiPen, they also insisted that Ty could only attend the party if I was there, or one parent was there as well. So at age 11, this is completely uncool for Ty. So that was another thing that he wasn't happy about. So anyway, the day of the party came. I had to pay $30 for the privilege of the party, which Ty wasn't eating any of the food there at all. I then had to go out, and as many of you will know, that free from food can be quite expensive. So I then had to pay another $17 to get a free from pizza that I could take down for Ty. I had to get a bag of lollies, make the cupcake, and then I also provided a dairy-free ice cream. So again, like my bill for this party was getting higher and higher, and I was still actually paying the full price for the party. And so I went down, I timed all the pizza for when the kids were having their food, and I walked in, and there must have been about 60 kids all walking around with tubs of ice cream. They were jumping on each other. And as anybody knows, especially like I'm in Queensland, so ice cream melts. So, ice cream all over everybody's hands, and there was going to be no hand washing because that was too difficult to monitor. So I don't know how this actually made Ty feel. He would be fully aware that, we eat ice cream around him, but he knows that we wash our hands. But when you've got a room full of 60 plus kids that have all got ice cream over them, it probably made him feel quite unsafe. He knows that he'll only have anaphylaxis if he eats food. If one of his friends were to touch him, he would get hives. But it's just something that could have easily been avoided. We could have had ice blocks. We could have had sorbet. And the kids wouldn't have known any different. They would have just been having fun with their friends. So I share those stories just because you will come across people that aren't very kind, that don't get it. And all you can do is manage that as best you can. The way I dealt with this is one of us was asked to go in and be at the party. For me, for my mental health, I felt like I couldn't be at that party with these people that clearly I didn't feel were very kind to Ty. So I delegated that job, and Dad went in and he supervised the party. So, and I also, I sent an email, said, I'm not going to argue about it. I know this is how you plan to run the party, but this is how you made me feel. And maybe next year, or if you do this again, can you please consider, not having ice cream or whatever it is that someone's allergic to, having a different food. So moving on. How do we create inclusion all year round? So I always encourage people that are starting school to meet the teacher, and to do this every year at the beginning of the year. So you have a one-on-one with your teacher, and any activities that might involve food, that they contact you. Now, some of you may start work when your child goes back to school. Some of you may already be working. So I always think like the night before is not good enough. I always like to have a week notice in advance that something's coming up and we might need to prepare some safe food. And that way you can talk about things like sports days. So lots of schools might have ice blocks on sports days. So you can check ahead of time whether the ice blocks are going to be safe for your child. And if they're not, you've got time to organise an alternative. Things like Easter, you'll have things like hat parades, Easter hat parades. It's really important that you remind your teacher to ask parents not to bring in real eggs or put real eggs on the hats. I think in one of our newsletters, we actually had decorate eggs. Again, this is something that you need to avoid. Christmas, we've already spoken about, but again, you can talk about that at the start of the year, and then you can organise it. Like I always like to organise the Christmas party in around November time, so you can be part of the discussion with the teacher. Fundraisers is a big thing at school. So a lot of the time throughout the year, they might have certain fundraisers, and these always involve food. At our school, it was often a sausage sizzle. And again, this is something that children with allergies, at high school, there's 26 kids that have EpiPens. This is something that they often feel excluded from. They're not a part of it because they can't eat any of the food. So all their friends are super excited about being able to have the sausage sizzle, and they're left with having nothing. So I think it was about in grade 3, I decided that we would try and change this. And I actually asked, how hard would it be to, check the ingredients of the buns, the sausages, and make sure that the barbecue was free of egg and any other foods. And it was very simple to do. And now every time they have a fundraiser, the same sausages, breads are used, and it means that it's, anybody with an allergy can join in, because it's safe, and the school are very good at communicating what ingredients is in everything. A colour run that's actually happening at Ty's school today. So a few years ago, Ty actually had a flour fight with his brother. So he's not allergic to wheat. He had a flour fight, and he started to get, his skin started to burn and tingle. He started coughing. His eyes were streaming. It was like he was having an asthma attack. And I didn't actually know at the time what was going on. But in things like flour, especially in humid conditions, dust mites can form. So there was actually mites in the flour, and when he had a flour fight with his brother, the small particles of dust obviously went down his airways, and that's what he was having an allergic reaction to. So with a colour run, and lots of schools do hold colour runs now, it's important that just to be aware of that. If your child has a dust allergy, that it could cause a reaction, and a simple solution is just to wear a mask and just to make teachers aware of what may happen. So for Ty, when he did actually get the flour on his skin felt like needles was going into him. The teachers know what to do today if that does happen. Something else you can do if you want is you can join the P&C, and that way you'll be very much involved in all the events that happen at school. Moving on to Christmas and planning how to do Christmas safely for you and your family. Now, you may decide to host the rest of your family, and that way it's relatively easy because you have control of all the food and what will be provided. But here are a few tips that you might want to think of, whether you're having it at your house or somebody else's house. So you can prepare the safe meal first and make sure you cover it and clearly label it, because fridges will be full of lots of food and some of it will look quite similar too. Serve young children first to avoid making mistakes. Remind kids not to touch others while eating. So this is important if you're joining up with other friends or families that might not have allergies, just to remind them that after they've eaten to wash their hands and not to touch each other while they've still got food on their hands. Do not mix utensils or serving spoons. Wash your hands with hot soapy water after eating, or provide wipes. So often I've seen when we've had family get-togethers, lots of kids involved, we've been out having picnics, we've just got wet wipes and the kids can all wash their hands before they go and play with each other. Keep unsafe foods beyond the reach of young children with allergies. This is really important. If it's busy, you're talking to other people, you might have a 2-year-old, they see some chips on the table, they look like they're safe chips, they may be tempted to grab them. So just make sure that any unsafe food is out of the reach of young ones. Now, drink bottles. This is something that I've heard a lot of parents have had, their child has had a reaction either at school or childcare or at home because they've drunk from the wrong bottle. So glasses all look the same. Drink bottles can sometimes look the same as well. So make sure if you're going anywhere that your child has a really bright personalized drink bottle. And if you're an adult, it's also important that you might have a wine tag on your glass. That way you're not going to pick up the wrong glass. If you're having barbecues at this time of year, thoroughly clean the barbecue of any food residue, including the lid. A really good tip is to take the disposable barbecue cooking trays that you can find at Coles, and then you can cook your food separately. Make sure you also cover your food while cooking to avoid food splatter. And even better if you can cook your food first before everybody uses the barbecue. Now that a lot of the COVID restrictions have eased, some of us will also be eating out in restaurants. This is something I know families get quite stressed about. So here's a couple of tips. And I know tomorrow with the Allergy show, I think it's at 9:30, there's somebody doing a talk about how to do this safely. So some tips here. So call ahead and see if the restaurant or cafe can cater safely for you. Also, don't turn up at their busiest time. So there might be a certain time that they suggest you come where the kitchen's quieter, and they might be able to allocate an area in the kitchen that will be free from all the allergens. Always disclose your allergen. So it doesn't matter how many times you've eaten at that particular cafe or restaurant, always let them know. If staff seem unsure, don't risk it. So if I go to a restaurant or cafe and I ask the waiter or waitress if something is safe and they seem unsure, I always go and check with the chef, because they're going to be the ones that actually know all, the ingredients of the food. Use a chef allergen card. So these can be downloaded from the website. And you can just, when you make your order, you can hand that to the waiter and they can take it to the kitchen, and then that can follow your meal. So in some restaurants, especially the larger ones, there might be, several different people that will handle the meal. That card can go with that meal. Watch out for hidden allergens in sauces, dips, breads, and dressings. So quite often breads might not be made on the premises, they might be brought in from somewhere else. So really important to check that they actually know the ingredients of that bread. Egg, milk, often found in these things, or sesame. Crumbed or battered food can often contain milk or eggs, so always check that. Don't eat from buffets. Cross-contamination can occur with shared serving utensils, and also when people reach over and grab things, other food can drop on other plates. So just be careful of that. Don't eat from buffets. And check foods don't share the same oil. So a big one is shellfish may be cooked with chips. They may be cooked in the same fry. So that may be unsafe for you if you have a shellfish allergy. A quick story about Ty eating out here in the picture. It was Mother's Day, so it was a Sunday, and we decided that breakfast would be a nice, easy meal, and we thought we couldn't go wrong with him having some toast. So I called up a few days beforehand and checked with the chef if the toast was going to be safe for him. So he had, at that time, I think it was an egg and milk allergy. And the chef said, yep, we've got two kinds of bread. One of them isn't safe, it contains milk, but if you ask for the gluten-free bread, it is completely safe for him. So that was great. We turned up on the Sunday. Again, when we were ordering the food, I just checked with the kitchen. The bread, I've been told to order this gluten-free bread. Is it free from dairy? And they were unsure. So I said, can you check the ingredients? Being a Sunday, they couldn't check the ingredients because it was brought in from elsewhere. So they asked us if we'd like to cancel the order. So, of course, we don't want to cancel the order. We're having family breakfast, so we're not going to have one person sit there and not eat. So I actually ran out of the restaurant, went to the 7-Eleven and bought some bread, which they cooked up. So simple. When his meal came, we were charged for his breakfast as well. When his meal came up, it's not on the picture there, but it actually came up with a butter all-round plate. So that's just an example of how people don't get it, and there might be several people that were dealing with that order, and that's why using a chef card can be really helpful. So if that chef card is following that order, then when that last person comes and sees that order, they're not going to go and put the butter on the plate or whatever allergen they might be avoiding. So that's all about eating out. And I have to say, a lot of people are afraid to eat out, but we've always done it. From sort of when he was 9 months, we'd always take his safe food and he would just get a drink or something really simple from the menu, like rice or chips. And, we'd even give him the choice, what restaurant would you like to go to today? And he would have his favorites because he liked the music at a certain place. So, don't avoid eating out. There are ways to do it. So over this time of year, routines change, and that can be a time when reactions are more likely to happen. But if you continue doing these 4 simple things below, it's going to help. So one is always reading food labels. So you might be at someone's house, you haven't done the food shopping, but you can ask to read the food labels before you open that packet or they cook that particular meal. Always make sure that you're labeling safe food in the fridge. Know where the EpiPen is. So at your house, you might always have your EpiPen by the front door. If you're at a family's house, make sure that all the key people know where that EpiPen is going to be located there, or the same as if you're on holiday or camping. And it is a really good time to educate others. So you might want to take your trainer EpiPen and educate other family members while you're there. And just also think about the emotional impact that people have on you. I hear time and again that some people have family members that just don't get allergies. They might say that they're going to their sister's, but their sister just doesn't get it, or their brother-in-law insists on having bowls of nuts when your 2-year-old has a nut allergy. Just think about the emotional impact that that person may have on you. If it's too stressful, avoid spending time with that person. So it doesn't mean that you completely say no to all events, but just limit the time you spend with these people. It is important that you are having a good time too. When I went to my sister's family who live in New Zealand, there was somebody that had a fish allergy, someone that was celiac, and then Ty that was milk and egg free at the time. And I was expecting to cook, and my sister was like, no, I've got it all covered. I'm cooking for everybody. And I was just like, wow, this is just like amazing. So really celebrate these wins when you meet people that, you know, will bend over backwards to make you included and make your life easy. And then I also saw her just pulling her kids aside and just saying, hey, remember, you know, after you've eaten, just make sure you wash your hands before you play with Ty. It was really simple. It wasn't made a big deal of, but it just, you know, made everybody feel really good. And remember to have fun. The focus is not all about food. It's about enjoying each other's company. It's about the activities, the games you might play together. I think especially this year, we've all, you know, been separated from people that we love. And remember, it's just about spending time with each other. It is not all about food. And lastly, and this is very important, be kind to yourself. Don't try and do everything because it will become very overwhelming. You know, have turns with your partner. Don't try and take on all the grocery, the cooking, and always being on alert, looking after your child if you're at a party. You know, tag team with your partner. So, you know, one day you can have a drink, or, you know, ask granny to look after your child so you and your partner can have time together without constantly having to think about allergies. So hopefully there's some tips that are going to help you over this really busy time when there's going to be so much food involved.
Thank you so much, Jackie. Wow. It's so interesting seeing the complexity behind allergies and intolerances. And someone who's personally has intolerances but not severe allergies, seeing how it can actually impact a family and how we all need to be aware of our actions because they definitely do have effects on other people. As I would have already guessed, you have a few questions that have come through. So if you don't mind, do you mind if we just steal 10 more minutes of your time to answer a few questions?
Oh, go ahead.
So one question was, how understanding do you find the parent community regarding severe allergies other children have?
Well, my example of the graduation party just shows you how, you know, some people just don't get it. And, you know, I always sort of think back to how I was 12 years ago when, you know, I didn't know anything about allergies. And, you know, would I have done what these parents have done? I like to think I wouldn't have. I like to think I would have been kind. But, you know, not everyone gets it.
Yeah.
But you will also meet a lot of people that do get it and are very kind, and just celebrate those people and hang out with those people.
Definitely. Another question, how do you educate family that just don't get it? So, especially if you have younger children and their sibling has a severe allergy, how do you get around that and make sure that they don't miss out, but then also that they don't then go and sort of tell the other person and then they feel like the other person's missing out? How do you try to avoid that, or any recommendations?
Yeah. So with immediate family, so within the family home, that's something that I was very passionate about and why I started my food allergy friends. So I have an older child who's now 17 and he doesn't have any food allergies. So that's how the books came about. I wanted to teach Ty about his allergies and how to stay safe, so he was empowered. And obviously, I wanted to teach his brother about it. And you'll actually find, because I deal with so many families, and often, you know, one child will have an allergy and the other won't. These siblings are amazing. They do everything to protect, you know, their brother or sister that have allergies. And that's why you can use books and educate them. And then they'll actually go on and educate everybody else. And, you know, I remember Finn speaking up many times, you know, make sure, you know, when he was playing at a park, make sure you guys wash your hands after to keep your brother safe. And to kids, it's just very normal. You know, they don't think anything of it. You might find older family members that, you know, in their day, you know, even in my day when I was at school, I didn't know anybody with allergies. And you'll have people that say, oh, just toughen up, just give them a bit of the food, you know, you just give it to them. it's pretty hard. There is no answer for these people, really. I do say that there are some videos that you can share. There is a campaign that the UK have done, and it's a video of someone having anaphylaxis, and you might want to share that with them, kind of shock them. I don't think you should be sharing this with a child particularly, but older parents, older grandparents and things that might not get it, that's a good way to do it. Share a video of what actually anaphylaxis can look like.
Definitely. And I know that your child, Ty, actually had a situation one Christmas where he ended up in hospital, which I guess no parent wants to go to hospital, and especially on Christmas Day, considering the lack of resources because, a lot of people on holidays, etc. Can you just share a bit about what happened and how you actually approached that situation?
Yeah. So as I say, I mean, I'm all about planning, but you can never plan when anaphylaxis is going to happen. And so yeah, it was Christmas Day. Ty, when he was younger, did have a shellfish allergy, but he'd grown out of it. He was eating calamari, he was eating crab, he was eating prawns. The rest of the family don't like prawns, so it's not something we have regularly. And when you do outgrow an allergy, it is important that that food is constantly in your diet. So I have to say that he hadn't had prawns for maybe a couple of months. So he had prawns. We didn't think anything of it. Straight away after he'd eaten them, he came to us and said that his throat was really itchy. And so we started thinking, oh, what have you eaten? Like, did we cook something, as my husband that had cooked the food. And I was like, did you cook eggs in the same frying pan? What happened? And we were trying to kind of figure it out. And he said, no. So we kind of like, okay, it must be the prawns then. And he started to get very hay fevery, and then his voice started to change. And at that point, I would normally always give the EpiPen when you can tell that their airways are compromised. But being Christmas, I knew the minute I gave that EpiPen, that was it. Christmas Day was over. We'd be going in an ambulance. We'd be spending at least 4 hours in the hospital. And something just made me hesitate. And suddenly he became okay. 5 hours later, he suddenly came to me and said, I don't feel so good. Can we go to the hospital? Because there's no doctors open on Christmas Day. So I said, yeah, absolutely. So, but there was no symptoms, no hives, no coughing, no hay fever. He was completely fine. Jumped in the car, said, yeah, of course we'll take you to hospital and get you checked out if that will make you feel comfortable. Literally got on the motorway, been driving for like a minute, and he goes, I need my EpiPen. There was nowhere to stop. There was no hard shoulder. There was a roundabout coming up. So I went on the roundabout, raced home. We were home like within a minute, walked through the door, looked at him, and he was as white as a ghost with blue lips. Laid him down, gave him the EpiPen, and called the ambulance. But Ty's amazing. He has such a great mindset. He knew that something was wrong with his body. Obviously, his blood pressure had dropped. So he was white. Things were going on in his body. He knows the signs. And he acted upon it. He communicated with us. Then in hospital, he thought it was great. I had a ride. It's a story to tell. So he tries to sort of change the dialogue. Yes, he ended up in hospital, but hey, what a story that he can tell. He went in an ambulance, and in hospital they gave him a present, and then Finn and his dad came in with Christmas Day all in like a thermos, and we ate Christmas dinner on a hospital bed. But you just have to kind of go, okay, well, it's happened. We couldn't plan for it. We didn't know that you were going to be allergic. It's just one of those things, but we knew what to do, and we just look at it positively. So. Yeah. And it's a funny story to tell.
Was it, and do you know if it was the prawns? Was that what he reacted to?
Well, funnily enough, on Boxing Day, he was crazy about fish, and he'd got this big fish tank for Christmas. Now, in fish food, there's actually shellfish ground up. And I didn't realize this. I didn't even think about it because obviously didn't have a shellfish allergy at that point. So he had been doing his fish all day long, and we sat down to watch a movie, and he started getting really hay fever. He literally got through a box of tissues. He was streaming, he was sneezing. I was like, oh my goodness. We were watching a movie, and I just thought because he has a cat allergy as well, and I was just thinking, well, he sits where the cat is. So I thought he was having this allergic reaction from the cat. And, he gave him antihistamines and things. But it was actually probably that he'd had fish food on his hands, and had then eaten chippies and chocolate while we were watching the movie, and it had caused this reaction. Later, about 4 weeks later, we got an appointment with the allergist and we got him retested, and yeah, he did have shellfish allergy. So
I guess that's the thing. You've always got to be so onto it because you never know the hidden things. Like, who would think fish food? Like, you wouldn't think.
yeah, I mean, funnily enough, I'm used to, like, with animal feed, it can contain nuts and milk and all sorts of things, seeds and things. So I did check the fish food, but at the time I was checking it for the wrong allergens. So yeah, I mean, you learn all the time. We're learning, even doing this for 12 years, still learning. So,
So
and that's why it's really important to hear, personal stories, because this is the sort of thing that you don't hear in your doctor's appointment or allergist appointment.
no, and it just goes to show how real it is, and this can happen to anyone.
It can.
So I have one last question. I
Yeah.
find Christmas very overwhelming. There's so much focus on food, especially for myself personally. I'm from an Italian background, so Christmas Day is a massive feast, and there's a lot there. Do you have tips for coping, especially I guess if you do have an allergy for Christmas Day and there is a massive table of so much food that you might not be able to eat because of your allergies and intolerances? What are your 5 tips for coping?
Okay. Well, first of all, I would have a friend or family member, someone that you can vent to, because it helps to do that. Um, I would start new rituals. So, like for us, we get up, we have a family swim, so no food's involved. Um, it might be that you can do like these Christmas trees all made from fruit. You make your own ritual, you make your Christmas about you. Also, you have to kind of accept that your new normal, if you've got allergies or intolerances, is going to be like this. And you can't spend the next, 50 years hating every time that you have a Christmas or a celebration or a get together because you're different. This is your new normal. You kind of do have to accept that. And lastly, I work with Simone. People can struggle, and I think it's really good to talk to a counsellor because people do get very overwhelmed at this, especially at this time of year. So
Definitely.
talking about it really helps. And like what I did with the graduation party, I wrote an email and said, this is how you made me feel. Please think about that the next time you do it. And then that was it. That was me closing the book. That's over, forgotten about, on to the next thing.
Yeah, definitely. Otherwise, if you hold on to it, it just holds on to this built up tension, and then probably later on down the track, you'll erupt over something so
Explode.
small.
Yeah, because you'll
Definitely.
find like the next event you go to, you're already going to be like, oh, this is going to be terrible. This is going to be terrible. That's why I talk about like high expectations. It's not that we've got high expectations. It's just having your 3 goals, and that's just to be able to really attend safely and be included.
Perfect. Thank you so much for your time today. It has been amazing. The personal stories, I know there'll be so many of our community out there that will be able to resonate or know someone who can resonate with it. If our community need to find you, you can actually find Jackie or my food allergy friends in our exhibitor area on the virtual show in the Buy Now section. And there you can see Jackie's books, her allergy resources, everything is there, which is an amazing resource, not just for parents, but for anyone. So thank you so much for your time today, Jackie.
Thank you for having me.